If you're in the labor market right now, seeking work and have had interactions with human resources, this video's for you.
Hi, and welcome to Yeti at Large. This is a channel focused on making the most out of what you have, no matter where you're at. Thanks for tuning in and helping out.
So as I've explained in previous videos that I'm in my mid-50s and I'm in the labor market. I'm looking for that next iteration of my career, and as such I've had contact with a large number of HR departments, human resources, recruiters, hiring staff. And I have got to say that my experience, lackluster doesn't cover it. I have been sorely disappointed and even slightly offended by the lack of professionalism, the general sloth, and the unskilled approach in which myself and other people in the hiring pool have been handled. Now, right off the bat, you may say sour grapes because you didn't get hired for the job. Well, full disclosure, I haven't found a position that I want yet, and I'm not in a position where I have to leap at the very first thing that is presented to me. I feel very bad for people who may be in a position that need to acquire work quickly. But we'll address those sour grapes a little bit further in. The biggest disconnect comes in the measurement of my experience. Now, I started working full-time in 1983 and quickly worked my way into a position where I was responsible for recruiting, hiring, discipline, and separations. I have only tongue-in-cheek joke that as a chef, I have hired about 500 people in my career, but I've fired about 700. Such is the nature of contract food service management. But in that experience, I learned that the very first word in that job description is the only thing you need to know. Human. Human resources. You're dealing with people. So I was in the job market last time in about 2010, and it was a very different environment. Technology hadn't bloomed quite like it has. Maybe recent health issues and public policy wasn't quite where it is today. And because of that, now that I'm in the market today, there's been this huge gap, and boy howdy have things changed since I was in the market last. I went out the other day after filling out a half a dozen legitimate online profiles. They all ask you the same question. They all require you to fill out a separate profile. You can't just do one and be done. Very frustrating and annoying. And none of the profile formats really let you express yourself like you could face-to-face, one-on-one in an interview. And I wasn't getting any responses. I wasn't getting follow-up. I gotten a few automated rejections. Put in for a couple of vice president jobs here and there just to test the waters. And you get the automated, "Well, we thank you for your interest in our organization. We're going to pursue a candidate whose qualifications more closely meet our needs at this time. Please go right back to where you started and do it again." So I physically walked into a few of these HR offices, knocked on the door. "Hi, good morning. I'm Yeti at Large. I've filled out an application, I filled out a profile, and I'm not certain that I'm doing it well. I know that you're busy, but please, if you have some time, could you please take a look at my profile and maybe provide some coaching to see what I could do to improve my presentation to your organization?" To a person, every one of these departments, wouldn't talk to me because they would tell me to go right back to the online profile. B, didn't even have access to the online profile. They sent me to a third-party 1-800 number that manages the software and said you got to call them if you have questions about the profile. So naturally that spurs the question, well, how do you review candidates? Well, we don't. The computer matches you and then they send us possible links. That's why those keywords are so important. If you haven't studied keywords, please make sure that you understand that you've optimized your resume and your communication paperwork with the keywords for the position that you're interested in, and make sure they're contemporary because they change quickly. One place was even so shocked that somebody physically walked in, this was not healthcare by the way, so shocked that somebody walked in and said good morning that they were dumbfounded and the expression on their face was priceless. I was only slightly offended that when I thanked them for their time and left the building, that they instantly locked the door behind me as I left the room. I called the security office and I shared with them my experience, and they had shared to me that since 24 or 36 months that most of the offices are secure and that they only see people by appointment only. So somebody must have accidentally left the door unlocked. It's not like I snuck in. I literally walked from a parking lot through an open door and said good morning. Interesting stuff. But the thing is, universally, HR directors, I talked to two people who literally are on their social media and other electronic communications where they're lamenting the difficulty they're having hiring people and recruiting people and filling open positions, and then to turn around and walk in and have an experience where I was greeted with, we can't help you, you got to go back to the computer and fill out the online profile. That's the only way we can address the issues now. So 2 sour grapes. I will tell you right now, in human resources, you have to have great courage. Human resources. Not form resources, not computer profile resources, human resources. And yes, people are messy. We're a messy group of people. But if you're going to get people recruited and hired, you have to be contacting humans. Now, the first thing I'll say to address the sour grapes, if I'm not the person for the position, if I don't have the credentials or the recent experience or the demeanor that you're looking for, I still represent a very valuable piece of data for you as the human resources professional to learn from. How did I find that organization? What was it that I thought made my skills align closely with that open position? What was I looking for? What kind of job was I hoping to get? What were my expectations? What were my salary requirements? There are so many things you can learn from the wrong candidate in HR that taking a moment of your precious time to communicate with these people can be infinitely valuable. Now, I spent the last year in public safety in a direct recruiting and hiring position, and it was difficult. My heart goes out to you. But I will tell you the number one difference is I was in a locked, secured building that you had to have multiple badges and passes to get through. I made a point, if anybody walked in to talk to me about a position, I stopped what I was doing and contacted them immediately. Most of the applicants, if they dropped an application during normal business hours or when I had my phone on me, I would call them back within minutes. And if it was a Sunday and I didn't see their app, Monday morning at 8 a.m., I was calling them right away, thanking them for their interest in the organization and speaking with them. Now, in public safety, the overwhelming majority of the applications you're going to get are going to be a no-go for a variety of reasons. But I still spoke with all those people. I never once let anybody walk away from that engagement feeling devalued, underappreciated, or disrespected, to get real harsh about it. And a lot of times, I could send those people to other opportunities that would help them either build their skills to the point where they would be a viable candidate for a public safety position, or a geographical location that might fit them better, or a discipline that may a discipline that may more closely suit their skill set at the time. I did my best to support the other people who were looking for candidates where that person might be a viable candidate for them. And it brought me back to some real major figures in my mind. The first of which I thought about was Chief Red Cloud. He had the misfortune of being in the Dakota Black Hills when gold was discovered, trying to provide a better life for his people. Dealing with treaties and treaty violations and Ulysses Grant. I believe he authored a statement that basically, roughly translated, goes to the effect of the truth is rarely complicated. So that being said, the simplest explanation is usually the best one to deal with. That's Occam's razor. So when you're dealing with HR people and these HR systems and these profiles and resume builders and all these systems they've built, one of the ones I used a lot was a private third-party company called NeoGov. Very frustrating to navigate that as the administrator on the back end. Very frustrating. And it created these huge barriers to getting to know people, to meeting people, to connecting with people. So I just picked up the phone and called folks as fast as I could. That yielded the best results every time. I brought my computer because I wanted to share a couple of things and I wanted to get it absolutely correct. The other razor that I like to follow is Hanlon's razor. And it might have been ascribed to Napoleon Bonaparte the first, but back to sour grapes. If you think somebody's disrespecting you, if you think you're getting blown off, if you think you're not getting a fair shake, I will tell you, don't ascribe malice to that which is more readily explained by incompetence or laziness. I think the actual quote says stupidity, but I don't want to be harsh. HR people have a wall of paper and applications and demands on their time, and if you're trying to break through, don't think necessarily that they're being mean to you. They're probably not. You're probably just not showing up on their radar. It's like the old acronym, if you don't know what the letters mean, you're probably not qualified for the job. So just keep that in mind and take it with a grain of salt. There's no sour grapes. But what there is leaves me with a sour feeling is when I see someone demonstrating a lack of courage and a lack of professionalism in a position, and then to turn around and go on social media and lament how difficult it is getting people to hire for their position. I brought up the picture here of the P-38 Lightning. This was a Lockheed World War II development. Kelly Johnson, one of really renowned figure in aviation engineering. He was the godfather of the Skunk Works. They built so many critical, pivotal planes. They built this twin-engine P-38 Lightning. Hermann Göring of the Nazi regime looked to the sky and saw that and asked why he didn't have one of those. Right after World War II, Kelly Johnson built the first effective jet fighter for the United States military. He built the U-2 spy plane out of the F-104 Starfighter. He built the SR-71. He was responsible for the first stealth fighter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he said that when he was going to build the Skunk Works, he wanted complete and total control over the human component. It was a small team of the absolute best people with minimal interference, simplicity. But one of the things that I liked the most was his very last rule. Didn't save the best for last, and it wasn't the final thought on the thing. I don't think they were in any particular order. But he said, because there's going to be such a small group of people doing such specific work, that we need to find other ways to compensate people outside of the number of people they supervise. Typically, okay, he supervises 30 people, he makes this much money, and up the chain you go. But a different paradigm was needed in order to retain and motivate the best. HR directors, in 2022, 2023, you're going to need an old paradigm to recruit, attract, and retain the best. I think it was Henry Ford that used to say, it cost $1 to find them and a dime to keep them. Half of HR is dealing with the people already in the system and serving them. They're your customer. But that other very viable half, the half I've had exposure to recently, is the recruiting half. Now we're going to finish on Lincoln. Lincoln on leadership. Fantastic essay on Lincoln quotes. I would suggest to you that if you study, knew, committed to memory, and practice the principles and habits of Lincoln, you could be wildly successful. Every time I've had a failure in my career by my own hand, I've looked back and see where I've lost sight of one of these principles. His quote was, he was talking about firing John C. Fremont. Apparently he fired him on September 9th in 1861. And he said his cardinal mistake is that he isolates himself and allows nobody to see him, by which he does not know what's going on in the very matter he's dealing with. This is exactly what I experienced dealing with HR people. They isolate themselves. They lock their doors. They don't deal with the human element. Now, I have all respect for workplace safety and conserving your scarce and precious resources, namely your time. But if you're in human resources and you aren't taking frequent public opinion baths and frequently contacting the people already in your fine organization and the people who want to join your organization, you're doing it wrong. You need to go back and restructure your day, restructure your schedule, change your priorities. You need to have contact with people outside of your immediate office and your supervisory chain. You need to be talking to your customers and those outside people. It's important to explain yourself in writing and offer advice on how to solve problems. I went in and raised my hand using the power of please and thank you and asked for advice. 6 for 6, I got nothing. And I'm a pretty polite, congenial, patient guy. I exercise all of those subtle hallmarks of diplomacy, trying to get the most, and I struck out. So, for what it's worth, it's not sour grapes. Don't often decline to see people who call on you. That's where we're going to end it right there. In the near future, I want to go into my squad expectations from a leadership perspective and share some of the things that I made in writing that were important to my squad. I just want to close that if you're in human resources today, if your job is to attract, recruit, evaluate, test, hire, onboard, train, and retain people through the judicious application of the benefits available to them, you've got to have courage. The time that's coming in front of you with the way the economy is shaping up and the challenges that you are going to be experiencing, many of which are unwritten, unknown, never dealt with this before type of challenges, I would suggest you to turn the page backwards and look backwards and look at your job description. Human resources. Thank you very much. I appreciate you tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Please leave a comment below if you're in human resources or you've had an experience similar to that. Leave a comment down below. And I don't care if it is sour grapes. If you need to vent, vent to me. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Might spawn another episode.